70s, is how I've imagined her, which is sort of strong, athletic and stoutish. That's what I've imagined her to be. Because I know, I'm not saying it's not possible, but I do know if you're 5'2", and you can't ever make eye-line contact with a bloke, unless he's Napoleon, you've always got to lift up your power in other ways. And my sense of her in conversations with her peoples is that she probably already had that kind of physical presence that allowed her to have authority. And that's just my guess.
Got an idea of what she looked like. We ought to, I think, also address, this way in which she suddenly turns up in Iceland. And is she adored straight away? Does she have to fight the people who are there already and say, this land is mine? How is she received when she washes up on Icelandic shores? Who wants to take that?
So what you have to realise is that there's no one in Iceland when the first settlers come. We didn't take the land from anyone. A probably very unique situation. Chronicles tell us that there were a few Irish monks, but they left. These were pagans. These were the people of the old religion, the old Norse religion, believing in Odin and Thor and Freya and Frigg and so on. And we know from the chronicle that the country was settled first on the east coast, which is closest to, when you come from Norway, you come to the east coast first. The place where she settled is a deep fjord, and at the mouth of the fjord you have a very narrow gap. So there's a very strong current, very dangerous sailing to get to land from there, and which might explain why all that fjord was empty of people when she came. Her brother had already settled on the Snæfellsnes Peninsula, so she spent the first winter with her brother and with her grandchildren and her followers, and then she, in the spring after, she sailed through that narrow gap of the mouth of the fjord and settled in that fjord. And we can see from maps the area of each settler, and her taking of land was one of the biggest ones. And then she portioned it out to her people by time.
I mean, it might as well have been like landing on the moon. If you're the first people to set foot on this land, you've got all of these desperate people in the hold and on your decks who are, just want to live. That's all they want to do, is they want to live. And you have to hold it together, not just, to make sure that you've got provisions in this new lunar type landscape, keep them warm, keep them fed, but you have to keep them together.
Yeah. Everyone has lost everything. They have left their country, they have left everything they know, they have betted everything on being able to come safely to Iceland. We know that there were ships that perished on the way, lots of them probably.
Yeah, so Jude, that is such an important part of the story, isn't it? And shows the strength of the woman.
Yes, because first of all, you have to persuade people to come with you. I mean, obviously, if they're under siege in Scotland, maybe that wasn't such a difficult ask. And the men were her slaves, so they've got to do what they're told. Although they could have rebelled, they could have run, but they didn't. And then she lands and is with her brother. Now, this is an interesting moment, I think, because she could have said, well, I'll just hole up with you then. And in a patriarchal society, maybe the brother thought that would be an ideal situation, but she doesn't want to do that. And so she does want to retain her autonomy with her people and her kids. I mean, I often think, I remember the first time I went to Australia, thinking what an incredible thing it would have been as the convicts landed there and sort of made parts of Australia. Of course, Australia was already settled. It had Indigenous people, and therefore it's not an easy story, that. But nevertheless, the sort of fierceness that you have to say, this part of nature, we will be here, this difficult place in nature. But also, if you're just fierce, then people think you're a bit mad. So, you have to be able to reassure people that, yes, you're going to be able to set up a space, you're going to be able to find food and water, you're going to be able to start spinning yarn, you're going to be able to find shelter. It's a complex idea, building a community. And you've got grandchildren. And I think that her grandchildren weren't very old at that time. I mean, they were sort of, early teens at most, some of them younger. So her duty of care to all the people she loved, amazing. And then promising her slaves, who, as I said, were all high-born, that they would then be released and be able to become what they did become, which was like a strong Icelandic dynasty themselves. They must have thought she was the best leader.
I do think it's extraordinary. How long did it take Vilborg for from this moment of landing, and let's take it from the moment she visited her brother and decided, actually, no, I'm going to do this my way, to actually it becoming a settled civilization, if you like, something that we would recognise as a settlement?
Well, we don't know exactly how long it would have been between, when she takes land and when she starts portioning out the land to the men from Ireland and Scotland. But we can kind of surmise it from later history. For example, if you think about people when they come to North America, they have to build houses, you have to raise stock, and she would have been able to buy stock, sheep and cattle from her brother. And some years at least before she could say, well, I don't need so many people around me anymore, so you can go and take that valley, you can take on that valley, and so on. But it's important, I think, to explain why she is the only one who is said to have given freedom to all her slaves and given them land. We have a few stories about men who gave land and freedom to one because he did something specific for them, but not on that scale. And the reason must have been that she was a Christian among the heathen Norse. Landnámasaga, which is the chronicle of the settlement, claims she was a Christian and has detailed accounts of her having been baptized, that she was of such good faith as she prayed in a specific place called Krosshólar, which means the Mounts of the Crosses. And she said before she